So a news story came out recently about a feud between two businesses. And I'm not going to read the entire story, but I'm just going to give you some of the highlights of that feud. The whole thing, and this is what the small business owner said about it, the whole thing is like a total privacy breach. Brandon, who runs an events company, made several calls on October 28th to what is known as Easy Line, which is a bank's phone customer service. And that phone customer service promises this: convenient automated service or friendly personal service. And so that is according to the bank's website. But the exchanges were far from friendly, according to Brandon. You see, Brandon called hoping to resolve a problem with some e-transfers, but instead got irate and argued with the same representative twice. And at one point, he even said that the representative hung the phone up on him. So eventually, Brandon says that he went in person to the branch to sort of resolve the issue. And what he thought, he settled the issue that day in the branch. But then, just about a week later, he got a Google notification about a bad review that had been posted online about his small business. And so when he went to go look at who wrote that review, it was written by the same person, or the same person with the name of the bank representative that he dealt with over the phone. And the review referred to Brandon as an extremely rude owner who swears often at people. It went on to say that prospective customers would be better off paying someone else who respects others and themselves. Brandon says he immediately contacted the bank, and a manager later called and apologized, saying the review was taken down within an hour and that the employee would receive coaching. Well, for Brandon, that response was not adequate. He told the bank he wasn't satisfied with the apology and he wants more assurances his information will be protected, because for him the issue was that the only way that this bank representative knew about his small business was through the information that was kept at the bank. And so that information that was leaked on the internet through this review, that's what Brandon was upset about, that he wanted, that it was a breach of his privacy. And the only way the bank employee would know about his business is because of that. And so he said, I think the bank needs to assess how private information is accessed from employees. And he also believes the employee should be not be dealing with customers. And so this was a fight back and forth between the bank and Brandon, who is the small business owner. And he said, the fact that he took privileged company information and vindictively went after me, I can't believe it. Now, on the other hand, you have the bank who states they take these types of concerns seriously, and we are reviewing the matter. While we're not able to commit on specifics for privacy reasons, ensuring our customers have a positive experience is a key priority for us. So aside from all the ethical boundaries that this scenario passes, I have to wonder about the reputation of both the offending and the offended parties. The small business owner is upset because someone took confidential information and used it to post. He doesn't dispute the information. He doesn't say that it's not true, that's not who I am. He just is mad that they posted it in the first place, only that it shouldn't have been shared in the first place. And on the other side, you have a large company, TD Bank, who is trying to salvage their reputation both as an employer and as a public company. Ensuring our customers have a positive experience is a key priority for us. That is what they want to be talking about. But that isn't what is being talked about. That isn't what is being shared about their business. And so they have to put some kind of spin on it, right, to get their reputation back. So there are now lots of opinions flying around about both the small business owner and the large company, and that is tough because those businesses, they run on reputation. Most businesses run on reputation, and the fact of it is that most churches also have a reputation. Each of Paul's letters in the New Testament are addressed to churches, and each of those churches had a reputation. Philippi was the generous church. Thessalonians were the frightened church. Corinth was the divided church. Galatians was the backsliding church. So each of these churches had their own reputation, and I wonder what our reputation would be. If we met someone in the community and we revealed that we go to First Baptist Church Bluefield, how would you expect someone to finish this sentence? Oh, you go to FBC, that is the church that fill in the blank. Maybe they would say that, oh, that's the church that looks like a factory. Or that's the church that has the Christmas candlelight service. Or that's the church that does the trunk or treat on College Avenue. How would people describe our church? How would you like for them to finish that sentence? Oh, you go to FBC, that is the church that blank. And we'll come back to that in just a little bit. And the passage we read this morning has Paul encouraging Timothy to keep on with the work entrusted to him. Timothy has been sent to the city of Ephesus to provide leadership there for a church that is getting the wrong reputation. And he wants Timothy to instill leaders who will represent the church well and help to have the right reputation. So we're going to consider this passage this morning. We're going to consider the reputation that the church in Ephesus has already gotten, how people view it. We're going to consider how Paul wants them to be viewed, or the reputation he wants them to have. And then we're going to look at the implications, what implications that has for our lives and our ministry together. So in verse 4 there, in 1 Timothy chapter 1, he says, "Devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God that is by faith." So after a brief introduction in the chapter here, Paul explains Timothy's commission. "As I urged you when I went to Macedonia, stay there in Ephesus that you may command certain people not to teach false doctrines any longer." And some people had added new teachings to the gospel. Paul's letters does not exactly tell us what the false teaching were, but he does give us some clues. Some of the same ideas were second century Gnosticism, which taught salvation by learning various mysteries. The word Gnostic means knowledge. So Paul hints about heresy when he adds, or to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies. Such things promote controversial speculations rather than advancing God's work, which is by faith. Gnostics said that there were numerous layers of authority in the heavens, and we must learn the names of those spiritual powers in order to ascend toward God. And Paul may be referring to similar ideas with the word genealogies. So there's a lot of negative things that are circling this church in Ephesus. And so Paul sends Timothy to correct those things because people were spending their time on speculations for which there was no proof. The modern equivalent might be the competing news media that we have today. You hear the word fake news a lot, right? People devote themselves to this place said this and this place said this, and that starts controversy among us when we should be focusing on, or they're drawing our attention away from the issues, what's important. And the same thing is happening in Ephesus. People are being drawn away from what is important. And Paul corrects them in saying the real focus of God's message is faith. Trusting in God, not in trying to learn things that everyone else has missed. But some people no longer had good motives. We see in verse 7 that there were teachers of the law who were teaching without understanding. They were trying to get followers for themselves. Some have departed from these and have turned to meaningless talk. They want to be teachers of the law, but they do not know what they are talking about or what they are so confidently affirming. During my undergrad studies, I took 4 years of a biblical language. So 2 years of Greek and 2 years of Hebrew. And my biblical languages teacher was our very own pastor, Sean White. And I'm going to pick on him for just a little bit. For me, one of the most painful experiences during my college career was Greek. It was awful. There were many tears shed during that class by me and classmates. And Sean would often ask us questions. He'd be up at the front and he would ask us questions, and we would, and this was among all of us, we would answer back sort of tentatively. Well, third declension? And he would come back with this phrase. He said, "Are you asking me a question or is that the answer?" And we would come back and we would say, "That's the answer." And he would congratulate us on saying the answer confidently and then tell us we were wrong. One of his favorite phrases after making presentations and standing up there thinking that we have it all together, and he would say, "Just because you say it confidently doesn't make it right." Just because these people in Ephesus were speaking the law confidently did not make them right, and Paul knew that, and so he sent Timothy to correct that. See, the problem in Ephesus was that some people like to be known as teachers who bring new facts and new conclusions, and they can attract a following by speaking with confidence. They state or imply, "You need what I'm teaching, and you can't get it anywhere else." They had no understanding of what they were teaching. They had no understanding in verse 9 that the law is not laid down for the just, but for the lawless and disobedient. On top of all of this that is going on in Ephesus, the false teachers had their own slant on the law. And Paul begins to address that issue with a truism. We know that the law is good if one uses it properly. But what is the proper use of the law? And Paul explains that in the next few verses. We also know that the law is made for the righteous, or is not made for the righteous, but for the lawbreakers, and the rebels, the ungodly and the sinful, the unholy, the irreligious, for those who kill their fathers or mothers or murderers. As some Greek philosophers noted, good people do not need laws to tell them what not to steal or kill. Virtuous people don't want to do bad things anyway, but bad people are tempted to do such things. And so the law gives them a minimum standard of conduct. In contrast, the Christian standard is the maximum. We want to let Christ live in us, bear the fruit of the Spirit, and do the will of the Father. So Paul continues his list of ungodly behaviors, and he says, for the sexually immoral, for those practicing homosexuality, for slave traders and liars and perjurers. Paul summarizes the law is made for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine that confirms to the gospel concerning the glory of the blessed God, which he entrusted to me. Paul's doctrines, always given in conformity with the gospel of grace, include some demands on our behavior. If an activity does not conform to the gospel, then it is right to prohibit it. The law was made for the lawless. People were getting that confused in the church in Ephesus. So, amidst all of this confusion and chaos within this church and the false teachings, what is the right way? Paul says it in verse 5, the aim of our charge is love. As the errors of these teachers arose from improper views of the nature and design of law, Paul says that design should be understood. It was not to produce distinctions and angry contentions, was not to fetter the minds of Christians with minute and burdensome observations, but it was to produce love. An authentic church should be motivated by pure Christian love. The goal of the Christian life is not hate or controversy, but a particular type of love. From the Greek word agape. This specifically means selfless, sacrificial, sincere love. According to Paul, this love should come from a pure heart and a good conscience and sincere faith. These traits underscore the idea that agape love is not sensual or selfish, but rather seeks to help others. The love which is genuine must produce from a holy heart. The commandment was not designed to secure merely the outward expression of love, but that which had the seat in the heart. In the Bible, the heart is the center of our being. It is from the heart that we have good or bad thoughts. These cause us to perform good or bad actions. The heart must be clean for love to flow from it. It has to be pure with good thoughts and actions. And only God can make the heart clean and put real love in it. And He will take away all that is wrong in our hearts. He will do this as we confess our sins, like we do often in our services, corporately, but also individually. This commandment of love comes from a good conscience. Conscience is a knowledge of what is right or wrong in our actions and attitudes. The conscience of some people can be hard and damaged. Their consciences can be as dead as if burnt with a hot iron. For these, the knowledge of good or evil is not sure. But a good conscience is one that accepts the truth as its standard. It informs the mind as to what is false or evil. We need to keep our consciences good. We do this as we accept the truth of God's Word. And we ask the Lord to take away all that is wrong. To have a good conscience is to know that God accepts us as clean from all sin. A conscience free from guilt. And of course, there can be no genuine love to God where the dictates of conscience are continually violated. There can be no devout love to God where there is continuous guilt, or where a man knows he is continually doing wrong, or where a person wishes to have the evidence of love to God, he must keep a good conscience. All pretended love where a person knows that he is living a sin is hypocrisy. And the commandment of this love comes from a sincere faith. It's not like in the video, is our faith still in kindergarten? A sincere faith is a faith that is genuine and authentic, that continues to seek growth. Our English word authentic comes from the Greek word authentikos. And this word conveys the meaning of being genuine, trustworthy, reliable, and sincere. People with a sincere faith practice what they believe. Their walk matches their talk. And the Apostle Paul's desire was to demonstrate a sincere faith to others. A sincere faith comes to God in humility and realizing that without God I can do nothing. A sincere faith recognizes that apart from the grace of God, I can be guilty of the most reprehensible sins. A sincere faith chooses to respond in faith, knowing that I do not need to be held in bondage by my emotions, but I can choose to experience the joy and peace of God regardless of my circumstances. John, in the book of Revelation, sort of sums all of this together as he himself is talking about the church in Ephesus. And in the book of Revelation, he gives an example of what this authentic church could look like. When he also is addressing the church in Ephesus, he says in Revelation 2, I know your deeds, your hard work and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked people, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and then found them fake. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name, and you have not grown weary. Paul's words and John's words in Revelation, these should move us to be a church to be a church with genuine love. It should call us to work in such a way that we use our time wisely to serve the Lord and to love people in genuine and practical ways. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his work Life Together, says this: Christian brotherhood is not an ideal which we must realize. It is rather a reality created by God in Christ in which we may participate. The main idea behind Bonhoeffer's quote is that Christian community is not about warm feelings. It's about active engagement. It's not about trying to create the perfect, authentic church, but rather to participate in the church so that other people see that we are authentic by our actions. When the church loves with intent, the world sees Jesus. To truly love with intent is to love by design. Jesus has designed the church to love purely from the heart. The Lord has also designed the church to love with a good conscience. If we are to love as God has designed the church, we must love with a sincere faith. Sincerity means truth. It indicates something that is without hypocrisy or falseness. The design Jesus has for the church is to love from a faith that is more than statements of belief. It is a love that involves action, a love that is not fake. So I'm going to ask the question again. And it's not a question that was intended to be answered at the end of this service. It's a question that is meant to be taken from this place, to be asked among your small groups, among your committees, among each other, and then put into action by the entire body of believers. How do you want people to describe our church? Oh, you go to First Baptist Church. That's the church that blank.